Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, DwyerVIP.com for premium picks. Look us up in the sports section on Roku. We're there, Dwyer Boxing and Sports News. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, people here online know that I like to make sports predictions, talk about gambling strategy for sporting events, right? As they know, my life philosophy is that it's all a gamble, right? It all involves risk. What we try to do here is look for opportunities where the rewards outweigh the risks, right? But make no mistake, even a good opportunity can backfire, right? Full disclosure. Last night I privately made a bet on the Miami Heat over the Utah Jazz, right? You remember the Miami Heat, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade and them. Well, it didn't deliver. LeBron was held to 13 points. The Heat actually lost to the below 500 Utah Jazz. Less beer for me this morning. Bets will blow up on you. They blow up on me every week, right? If you bet often enough, you're going to have your share of losses. But I would take the Miami Heat over the Utah Jazz again today because I believe the risk reward is there, right? It's with that in mind that I talked to you today about something that someone walked up to me in a bar the other day to discuss, something I mentioned in passing in an earlier video, and several of you immediately contacted me wanting to know more information. Let's talk about something I believe in. Bitcoin. I'm making this video on February the 9th, 2014 because it's been quite a weekend for Bitcoin. Right? One of the world's leading Bitcoin exchanges, Mt. Gox, is in flux. They've had technical problems. Right? The price of Bitcoin on this exchange has tumbled. It's caused the price of Bitcoin to tumble worldwide. Right? Over the weekend at different times, the value of the currency has dropped by greater than 15%. There's been volatility the last 72 hours, right? And of course, there's been talk of a Ponzi scheme. There have been reminders of the tulip bubble many centuries ago, and people want to know if Bitcoin is still a good investment. In my opinion, Bitcoin is one of the best investments you can make. This weekend can be interpreted, quite frankly, as one of Bitcoin's finest hours. Understand that here you have one of the leading Bitcoin exchanges encountering major problems. I mean major problems. And still, as I make this video, the currency is still well north of $600 a coin, right? In other words, the currency is so diversified among numerous exchanges that it can and it will survive whatever happens to one of its biggest exchanges, Mt. Gox, right? Understand right now, credible Bitcoin wallet services have proliferated all over the internet. I can tell you that I personally use Coinbase.com, right, and CampBX.com. I do not have an ownership interest in either outfit, but I can tell you that the two different Bitcoin wallets I've used, those services are exemplary, right? Let's talk about, though, why Bitcoin, quite frankly, represents a monumental moment right now in the history of technology, right? Mark Andreessen, who Let's remember, not only created the Netscape browser, he also created Firefox. Right? He's largely responsible for the ease at which all of us use the internet. He believes Bitcoin is one of those special moments akin to the birth of the personal computer in the mid-70s, akin to the birth of Netscape, right? The arrival of the internet. It really is a defining moment. Understand, Bitcoin, unlike tulips, has significant utility in financial transactions because it reduces the transaction costs. Right? If I'm going to send money from here to there, let's say I'm going to send money to Africa. Understand, traditional banking systems are middlemen in the transaction. And they would take 8% of the transaction, if not more. So for every $100 that I send to Africa, some middleman or middle organization, some bank, would pinch $8 out of the 100. So the recipient wouldn't get $100. The recipient would get $92. Right? That $8 pinch over time adds up to the point where bankers are among the most well-paid people in the world. You go through Wall Street, you're going to see, right, Teslas, Maseratis, Lamborghinis. You understand that it's that pinch that allows these banks to make the profits that enable them to occupy some of the most expensive real estate globally. Now, what if I told you that there's a technology that would eliminate almost all of the $8 from the transaction, that would allow me and the recipient of the money transfer collectively, the person I'm sending the $100 to actually keep most of the $100? What if there was a technology that actually was verifiable, where I could literally send $100 and there would be a ledger, an electronic ledger of the transaction, right? Where I could send the $100 to a friend and there would be proof that, one, I had the $100 to send, and two, that they got the $100. Or if you take out the transaction costs, let's say they got the $9.80 or so, right? $99.80. Right? What if we eliminated the bank's take from the transaction? Let me just tell you, that technology would be disruptive to the banking sector. That technology would also be of utmost value to me. Right? Because what you're telling me is then anytime I wanted to send $100 to Africa, I'd be able to do so without paying a huge $8 pinch. That's Bitcoin. Understand, Bitcoin is a qualitative leap over current technology. Rather than me paying onerous banking fees, now I can do online transactions where I'm paying next to nothing to transport money. Let's go one step further. What that actually allows is a new market of micropayments, where if someone is selling a newspaper online, I can send 25 cents and they'll get most of the 25 cents. That market doesn't exist if there's a middleman taking 20 cents of the 25. Right? It doesn't exist if there's a banking sector in between all the transactions taking such big fees that the transactions are no longer financially feasible. So what Bitcoin actually is going to allow you to do is to move money more cheaply. It's also, because of the Bitcoin ledger, going to allow you to move money more credibly. There is more of a trail on a Bitcoin transaction than there is on a transaction when you're paying cash. Right? Contrary to what you're hearing in the news about Silk Road and all of these other fly-by-night outfits, understand with Bitcoin, there is more of a trail than there is in a criminal cash enterprise. In fact, if you're involved in illegal activity and you're doing a transaction, a back alley someplace that you don't want traced, you're better off doing that transaction using US dollars than you are using Bitcoin. Right? Let me also point out too, I know there are a lot of cryptocurrencies out there. Right? Many cryptocurrencies. I'm not going to name any of them here. Just understand that Bitcoin, of course, has first mover status. Right? Bitcoin is by far the most widely used cryptocurrency. Right? And so my point to you is, as you look at Bitcoin, understand it has more global acceptance than any other cryptocurrency. Let's talk about another benefit to Bitcoin. It isn't controlled by any government or central bank. Now, I know critics of Bitcoin consider this to be a negative. You've got to be kidding me. I'm in the United States. My government right now is operating at a deficit. The national debt here is $17 trillion. In fact, it's more than $17 trillion. Right? So what I'd like to know is, how does the American government have any credibility when they're talking about financial planning or the backing of their currency? Quite frankly, if you judge the American government on their performance, you'd be questioning the dollar, not praising it. Right? When your government is a debtor government to the tune of $17 trillion, then what you have is an unjustified and artificial sea of liquidity based on borrowing. Let's just say Bitcoin right now is more financially sound than the US dollar. I also don't want the currency I use subject to the whims and fancy of politicians and a political process. Rather, I want the value of my currency to be based on markets. So the fact that Bitcoin isn't governed by a government, to me, is a positive, not a negative. The truth is that Bitcoin is more uniquely qualified since it's a global currency and not just a local government-backed currency to survive disruptions like the Mt. Gox disruption, because it's global in nature, not local. Right? If it were just a local currency, then a local disruption would throw it off course. Since it's global, then what you have are just disruptions in a global environment, a bigger pond in which to deal with the ripples. Right? Let me also point out too that because Bitcoin is global and decentralized, then it will hold value even when the local government loses credibility and its locally issued currency falls apart. So if you're watching this video from places like Argentina and you're looking at your local currency lose value through inflation, right? Through some politician or some local bank deciding to overprint the local currency. You don't have that problem with Bitcoin because, of course, the number of Bitcoin to be mined is already predetermined. You don't have an unlimited supply of Bitcoin. More importantly, the number of Bitcoin don't rely on the local political process. So when you weigh all of these factors, let me just say I fully expect 2014, and I'm making this video on February 9th, 2014, to be the year of Bitcoin, right? Of all the bets that I recommend here online, I don't think any have the profit margin long term that owning Bitcoin today has, right? This is a breathtaking technological advance. I hope you read up on it. I hope you go to sites like CoinDesk.com and Coinbase.com and CampBX.com to find out more about this currency, right? It's not a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is Social Security. That's a Ponzi scheme, right? A Ponzi scheme is having your central bank engage in quantitative easing, which is really a fancy way of saying monetize the debt. That's a Ponzi scheme. This is different. This is a technological breakthrough that lowers transaction costs for commerce and eliminates the middleman. I think it's worth a look. I hope you look at how Bitcoin rebounds after this weekend. I hope you watch the growth and the acceptance of Bitcoin. I hope you investigate further how it actually facilitates transactions involving micropayments and how it is, simply put, the most efficient way, and it's all about efficiency, to transport money by far. And I hope you then make your own determinations on the currency. All I ask is that you do more than just take what the mainstream press is telling you at face value. I hope you give it a look. Leave your comments for us here on YouTube. Thank you for stopping by.